that I bought, I'm gonna tell you some ghost stories. Now, some of these stories I have told before on this channel, but it was a long time ago, and so I decided I wanted to kind of share them again because they're some of my favorite stories to tell. So basically, the story I'm about to tell I have told before on this channel, like I said, but it's been a minute and it's one of my favorites and the ones that stick out to me the most. So, when I was younger, I lived with my mom and my dad and my sister and my aunt, uncle, and my cousins. And we lived in a big yellow house on a hill that was kind of far away from the road. And it wasn't a very big house. It was a big house, big-ish. It had an upstairs, like a middle floor. It had a basement, and it had an attic. And this house was really interesting because in the basement it was a spiral staircase, and then if you went deeper, there was this weird basement storage room that had 3 doors, and that each one had like these weird concrete rooms. It was really weird and really creepy down there. I hated going down there. But there wasn't enough rooms for all of us, so my parents slept in the basement, and my cousins had their own room, and my aunt and my uncle had their own room as well. So we needed to figure out a place for my sister and I to sleep. And so we decided to convert the attic into a bedroom. Now, this was before I had a fear of attics. I do now. But I used to not really think anything of it because it's just another room. So we decided to take everything out of the attic and convert it into a bedroom, which was actually really very, very cool because we had our own space and there was a window that gave you access to the roof. We weren't supposed to go out on the roof, but we did because, you know, children. And there was this little alcove in the wall, how like the wall was, you'd come up from the attic and then there was a wall and then another wall, and we'd kind of dip in and we would put a bar there, so we would have like a closet area. And so we made that into a closet area and put like a closet pole in there so we could hang our clothes, and we had little drawers and stuff. It was really cool. But something about this closet that was a little odd was that it had this hole in the wall that was covered by a very thin piece of plywood. It was like drilled into the wall, and you know, nobody thought anything of it because, like, why would we? And so we just didn't think anything of it. And my sister and I had 2 twin beds, and I slept in the bed closest to the quote-unquote closet, like the creepy hole, and my sister slept in the bed that was closest to the window. So we spent a lot of time in there. It was actually really cool. It was a really nice room, and we had a lot of good times in there. But this one night in particular really ruined it for us. So one night in particular, this was also before I was afraid of the dark, and we were sleeping, and I got woken up because I kept hearing this thumping sound, and I didn't really think anything of it because the attic was like just above the living room, so I thought maybe it's because there's people downstairs and, you know, maybe they're watching something or something was going on. So I just tried to go back to sleep, but then the thumping progressively got louder, and so I ended up waking up my sister because I didn't understand where this sound was coming from. And so I woke her up because I was really confused, and so was she. And so it progressively got louder, as if someone was like banging on a door. So we ended up turning on the light, and we were looking around and trying to figure out maybe someone's banging on our attic door thing, but nobody was there. And so we look in the closet and we see the piece of plywood shaking, as if someone is knocking or banging on the plywood from the inside of the wall. And the banging just gets louder and louder, and the plywood starts moving more and more, and we obviously get freaked out, leave the room, and are too afraid to go back into the room until the next day, until the sun comes up. So we tell our cousins, and me, my sister, and my cousin go up back into our attic room to kind of figure out like what the hell is going on there, because like that's fucking weird. So we decide what, I've seen this movie before, this terrifying horror movie, but we decide to open the hole. So we decide to remove the plywood and, test out the demons and open up this hole. And on the inside, we find really old, like, toys. Children's toys. The kind of toys that in horror movies they tell you not to touch them because you're gonna get cursed. Those kinds of toys. And we didn't want anything to do with that because we have had our own experiences ourselves and night terrors and other things. So we decided not to deal with that. And it was terrifying. And so we sealed back up the hole, and I never spent time in that attic room by myself after that. Not one time, because I was afraid to. I couldn't sleep in the dark, and I made my sister switch places with me because I didn't want to sleep in that near that closet ever again. So it never happened again, but it was terrifying and really scary. But what supports the fact that we found children's toys was that this wasn't the first time we had weird experiences in this yellow house. We would hear glass breaking in the other room, but there would be nothing that was broken. We would hear people talking, but there would be nobody around. But what supports the children's toys is that we would always hear kids running around and laughing and like their feet crunching the rocks outside, and just hearing them run and laugh and talk all of the time. But also, this hill was weird. The house was weird, but the hill was weird too. I don't know if have you ever been somewhere where your instincts are telling you, I should not go in there. It is not safe. There is something in there that is going to hurt me. That's how this hill was. My cousins and my sister and I could only walk up this hill so far before those alarms would go off. And it wasn't like the kind of alarms where it's like, oh, we're about to walk into the mountain. We don't know where anything is. And like, there could be animals. It wasn't that kind of instinct. It was like this weird, like, you don't want to go up there. You don't belong up there, something kind of dangerous like that. And so we never did. And there was this barn that we had that we weren't allowed to play in, but we did. And there was just something about the barn. And I do remember my sister telling me a story of that they found a graveyard up the hill or something. I don't remember that personally. I don't remember that because I'm 29. That was many, many years ago, but it's entirely possible. But it was really creepy, and I was really happy when we moved out of that house because of not just family personal things, but because of everything that would happen there. We would take pictures and get like the weirdest shit in our pictures because there was something there. And I think what was there has continued to follow us around. My sister and I are I'm empathic. I've talked about that before, and I think my sister is too. I think we're both quite sensitive, and I think whatever was there followed us because I've always had something follow me everywhere that I go. And I think a lot of that came from that house and the experiences we had at that house. But another story that's one of my favorites is when my sister and I were young, we used to go to our grandparents' house in California. And there was one day we went to our aunt's house, and there was us and a bunch of our cousins and some kids at the house. And this was a really really old house. And so all of the kids decided that we wanted to play hide and go seek in the dark. And so we turn off all the lights, right, while all of the adults are doing whatever the adults are doing. And we decide to play hide and go seek in the dark. And I decide to go hide behind this plant. Well, another kid decides to hide behind the same plant that I hide behind. And we're both trying to stay quiet and stuff. But I remember feeling like there was something really strange about this kid that was hiding with me behind this plant. Because they had this weird, and it's gonna sound so strange, but they had this weird glow about them that was just like different. Like, I'm very pale, but I don't glow in the dark. And it was like this person was so pale that they glowed in the dark. And I remember thinking that was so weird, but I thought maybe it was just there was some light coming into the room to make it look that way. But the other thing was, and people who have had experiences before will know what I mean when I say there is a part of you that knows what you're seeing isn't right. Like, that knows what you're seeing is otherworldly and unnatural. And there's just this instinct that we can feel the energy, because we're all made of energy, and you can feel it when something is of different energy of you. And I knew, even when I was young, I could feel that there was something different about this kid. But I just thought, you know, we're playing hide and go seek in the dark. I'm afraid in the dark because this was like after what happened in the attic in the other house. And I'm just afraid of the dark, and you know, I'm trying to hide. I don't want to be found, all that stuff. And so we're still hiding. Eventually everybody gets found and the lights get turned on. And I remember when we all got back into group, I was looking for this kid. I was looking for the kid that was hiding with me behind this plant, and I couldn't find him at all. There was nobody there that resembled the kid that I was hiding behind the plant with. And I remember this feeling so vividly, because it's like this weird sense of confusion and dread and fear, because coming to the realization that you think that you saw something that wasn't real, or maybe people won't believe you, is wild and crazy. And I still remember that feeling of being behind that plant with that kid, and that feeling of there's something off about it. And this house too was wild. It was really old and it was wild. I remember pictures would either fall off the wall or would like clack against the wall, and they would fall off the wall all the time or turn upside down. I remember things would get misplaced and you'd lose things all of the time, setting stuff down and then losing it entirely and never finding it again. I remember finding stuff in the yard, weird shit in the yard. So if there was something happening in this house and I saw some child or something, I wouldn't be surprised, because it's just weird things happened in that house. And I've realized when I talk about the stories that I've, like ghost stories and things that I've seen, I realize it's like, I think there are people who attract spirits and entities, but I do think that there are spirit and entities and locations that have these spirits and entities and energies that attract people without realizing it. Because a lot of the houses that I've lived in or been in were haunted. I know there's something here in this apartment with me and my sister. And the thing is though, is that this building isn't very old. I moved into this building 4 years ago, and I moved into it 2 years after it was built. So this building is very young. So I live on one of the most haunted roads in Ogden. And so it would be weird and like, it's difficult to think that there's nothing here. But also, like I said, I believe I've had something with me, or occasionally with me, forever. And I feel like I attract it. And it's never felt necessarily negative. It just feels supernatural and different, because it's of a different energy. It's of a different plane. And I find that really interesting. And I do feel like I attract that energy, but also I feel like that attracts me and we're like a kin. And especially in October when the veil is thinner, it's like even more. And today is Friday the 13th, and I'm one of the people that believe that Friday the 13th is actually a lucky day and it's a lucky number. There's of course people who don't, but I do believe that it is, and that good things can happen on Friday the 13th. You would think I'd put my glasses on to help me find stuff, but I guess that just, you know, takes all the fun out of it, I guess. Tried out this new Tarte Man-Eater, like, liquid blush. This doesn't mess around. I had to tone it down because I put too much. So, fair warning, if you want to try this, just, you know, be careful because it will get you. So when I worked at the adult store, I worked there for 4 years, and I was a manager for, I want to say, about 3 of those years. And so I would be at the store by myself a lot of the time, and because I'd have to open up the store, and I would get there pretty early because I'd want to get everything situated and started. So I would get there early and I'd be by myself, and it'd be kind of dark, and I'd be opening the registers. Whenever I was alone, I would hear, like, if I had my back, so like say this is the register, behind me is like where the racks are in the store is, I would always hear people walking through the racks, like hearing like what sounded like people moving hangers, and like the screeching of the hangers moving across the metal. And then I'd turn around and I'd stop hearing it. But the thing that would always kind of creep me out was when I was in the back, more adult area, where we had more of the toy situations, I would hear a man's voice in the front where I had just previously counted the register out there. Because we would have, the front of the store was like a boutique area where you could buy your lingerie and your lubricant and all that stuff. We had a back room for the more adult section where you could buy your toys and other fun things. And so I was in the back doing the register where the more adult stuff is, and I would hear a man's voice in the front where the lingerie is. And I knew I was there by myself, just by my onesie, like, you know, not even having to like worry about it. And I had a key, right? The doors were locked. I was the only one that had a key. When my coworker got there, I would have to unlock the door to let her in because she didn't have a key, to give you some perspective. So I would always hear, and always a male's voice. I never ever heard a woman's voice. And I remember when we were doing some construction in the building, and there was a shoe room, and before the shoe room got its own door, it had just this curtain that kind of blocked off the area. And I remember being there by myself for a minute and seeing this curtain move, and I swear with every part of me and everything that I have that I saw a figure of a person standing in the room. Like when you look in a dark room, but you can kind of see a silhouette that's darker than the rest of the room, that's what I could see. And I remember it scared me, and I would never go into that shoe room, even when it got a door, without turning the light on first. I'd never walk in there in the dark and grab something. I always turned on the light. Even if I knew exactly where something was, or if it was just inches in the room, I would always go in there with the lights on. Does not mean whatever could be hanging out in that shoe room wasn't there, I just felt safe in the light, right? That's why we used fire and created light, was to push back the darkness, right? Because there are things in the darkness. But for me, I have always seen out of the corner of my eye, and I think I've mentioned this before, the silhouette of a man. Sometimes he's just like a silhouette and just darkness. Sometimes I see a man with a button-down shirt and suit pants, and he looks well-dressed, like he's wearing a suit, basically. And it really just, I guess, depends on the time of day and the time of year. And of course, whenever he wants me to see him. And I felt so freaked out, but also like, is this real? Am I really seeing this and hearing this? And the moment my coworker and one of my other managers said, I always hear a man's voice, that's when I was like, okay, that's real. That's real. I remember we used to have this garland during Halloween that was like clown heads, and I remember seeing it move, and not like move where the AC blows it around. I mean, someone grab it and then let it go. But without fail, and the reason I believe it's someone following me is because when I worked at the iPlace, and I remember mentioning this on the channel too, seeing the silhouette of a man and hearing a man's voice in the back when I was by myself. So I think he came with me. But I think there was also stuff at the adult store before, because the original store that they had, the very first store that they had, was extremely haunted and very old. The owner actually had investigators come in and investigate the building, and they got amazing evidence. And when they changed buildings, a lot of the pieces that were in that original location were spread out to all the other locations. So I think that, I think objects gather energy just as much as we do as humans, because think about it, you're in a space constantly. How do the objects you own, the clothes you wear, the walls you're around not absorb the energy that you're getting off? You give off. Like when people say, if these walls could talk, really, if these walls could talk, they could tell stories that nobody else could. And I think objects can absorb energy and residual as well. So I genuinely think that an energy came from that haunted location and took a home in the location I worked at. And it was never like scary or dangerous. There was only one time that I had an experience there that scared the shit out of me, and it was, we had a wall that was just like hosiery, so it was like tights and fishnets and stuff like that. And I remember when we are straightening, we like to pull everything forward so it looks full, because people have a tendency of thinking a store is closing down if the display isn't full. So I remember pulling it forward with my coworker, and both of us saw one of the rows of the tights that we just pulled forward physically get pushed back, like as if I pushed it back. And it scared the shit out of the both of us, and we both removed ourselves from that place, because for me, for something to blatantly move something in front of me with that much force, that either tells me I'm annoying someone or someone's straight fucking with me. Which, I mean, if you're a ghost and dead, I'm sure you get bored. Like, honestly. I was talking to my sister about how it has to be frustrating when you're trying to be terrifying and scary, but nobody can hear you. Like you're trying to scare someone, but it's not working because we're not on the same plane of existence. Or like when people, like investigators, have their tools, and you're touching the tools and you're touching it to scare them, like, go the hell away, but they're like, oh my god, it's going off. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be? And lonely. How lonely that would be. You'd want to communicate so much, but since you're on a different plane, you can't. That'd be frustrating and sad to have to experience that, because you just want to communicate. And I'm sure some are like, get the fuck away from me, why are you here? Like imagine you're trying to just like relax and sleep, and then someone's like getting all up in your shit. Like, imagine what that would be like. You're just living your undead life, doing what you're doing, and some whippersnapper comes in with an EMF meter and is like, is there anybody here? Can you imagine? That would make me mad if I was dead. And I'm just trying to live my afterlife and, survive the afterlife, and someone's here trying to get in the way of that. I think that's funny. Here we are. And if you have any fun ghost stories to share with me, please share them. I love hearing ghost stories and ghost experiences. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Obi-Wan. I want Obi-Wan.
I'm gonna throw my glasses on. There they are. So, thank you for joining me in this video, and if you liked it, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you want to hear more ghost stories, hit the bell notification and hit the like button so I can know that you like ghost stories and so you can be notified whenever I post a video. Yeah, and I hope that you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night. Happy October, and this is Kat signing off. Bye, guys.